statue was presented to the United States by France in 1884. From the deck of a giant ocean liner, visitors get their first close-up of the city's downtown skyscrapers, which start at Broadway and Bowling Green near the southerly tip of Manhattan Island. Along Lower Broadway, celebrities are accorded a typical New York welcome. Wall Street, a man-made canyon in the heart of New York's financial district. At the far end is Old Trinity Church, one of the oldest landmarks on the island. The original church was built in 1697 and replaced by the present structure in 1846. Gravestones still stand in tribute to some of the earliest settlers. At Wall and Nassau, on the site of the old Federal Building, is the Sub-Treasury. It was here that George Washington took oath of office as first President of the United States. At Broad and Wall is the imposing Stock Exchange, the financial pulse of America, where ticker tape measures the fluctuating fortunes of the nation. Dominating New York City Hall is the Municipal Building, an imposing modern structure. City Hall is one of the few surviving landmarks of little old New York. Spanning the East River from Lower New York to Brooklyn is Brooklyn Bridge, the oldest and most famous of the city's many bridges. The Bowery, famous in song and story, now a dingy street of cheap lodging houses and questionable eating places. On the Lower East Side, the pushcart market still survives amidst much price cutting. Nearby is Chinatown, and Mott Street is its Broadway. The surroundings are exotic and mysterious. Thousands of Orientals live here in their own peculiar way. On ceremonial occasions, there is much noise and weird dancing. Here, the East meets the West and holds closely to its native customs and exhibitions. Washington Square marks the beginning of Fifth Avenue. Near the Centennial Arch is a huge fountain that not only serves as a thing of beauty, but as a happy relief for city youngsters on a torrid day. A short distance away is MacDougal Alley in the heart of Greenwich Village, where artists, good and indifferent, live and work, and where many have street exhibits of their artistry, hoping to find a ready purchaser. The Church of the Transfiguration, lovingly known as the Little Church Around the Corner, is famous for its romantic weddings. It is a shrine dear to the people of the stage. One of the city's colossal gateways is the Pennsylvania Station. Through it daily pass travelers from every state in the Union, a monument to the vision of a great railroad. On the site of the old Waldorf Astoria Hotel now stands the Empire State Building, the tallest structure in the world, 102 stories high. Its gigantic tower dominates the city and can be seen from nearly everywhere. Another midtown skyscraper is the Chrysler Building with its flashing silver spire. New York's famous Crossroad and one of the busiest, a smart shopping center where thousands pass daily. Autos, taxis, and buses move in an unending stream. Here stands the public library with 3.5 million volumes within its massive walls. Its friendly pigeons never want for food. A great fountain of knowledge in a great metropolis. In the very heart of New York City stands St. Patrick's Cathedral, one of the most beautiful churches on this continent. Each year, the Easter Parade brings out much finery and startling millinery, and some unusual participants. On this occasion, motor traffic gives way to the milling paraders. Directly opposite the great cathedral and towering above it is Rockefeller Center, a city within a city, 15 acres of mighty white buildings reaching to the sky. In the spring, the terraced plazas with their fountains and magnificent flowers are a thing of beauty never to be forgotten. 150,000 people pass through the portals of these buildings daily. And atop the Radio City Music Hall, rehearsals sometimes stop the work in offices nearby. From October to April, there is ice skating in the sunken plaza in the very center of this great project. Park Avenue, street of wealth, social prestige, and ultra-smart shops. Best viewed from the deck of a sightseeing steamer is one of New York's latest developments, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Drive along the East River. It runs almost the entire length of the island. When winter comes, Central Park takes on a cloak of white, reminiscent of the frozen pond back home. There is fine skating and oft-times organized winter sport contests. Springtime unfolds a garden in the city's heart, its four sides lined with stately buildings set in a tapestry of green. The obelisk, popularly known as Cleopatra's Needle, brings to Central Park a reminder of old Egypt. Here's a paradise for candid camera fans, especially at the zoo, where there is never a lack of models. The polar bears, transplanted from their frozen north, seem quite at home. Facing Central Park West is the Museum of Natural History, where mounted animals and birds of past and present are framed amid scenes typical of their natural habitats. It is one of the city's most interesting showplaces. To the west, along the Hudson River, runs the West Side Highway, a thoroughfare of beauty running the entire length of Manhattan Island. It is studded with many famous monuments and buildings. Prominent among them is the tomb of General Grant, which is open to the public daily. Riverside Church is famous for its great carillon, the largest in the world, with its 72 melodious bells high in the tower. Harlem, a large section in the northern part of the city. Here lives most of the colored population, not always prosperous, but seemingly always happy. Harlem, land of swing and jive, where the world learns how to sing and dance. Graceful yet imposing is George Washington Bridge. Spanning the Hudson River from upper New York, it leads to the New Jersey shore and the west beyond. But New York is not only steel and stone, it is people too. Millions of beating hearts, lights and shadows, night and day. A strange cosmopolitan paradox. A city that never sleeps. Its spinning tempo carries on into the dawn. New York, the Wonder City.
This is New York, a miracle city, a city of tall buildings, narrow dark streets, magnificent parks, broad avenues, homes and schools, stores and theaters and palatial hotels. A fascinating city, an incredible city. The commercial, financial, trading, and cultural heart of a great nation, the United States of America. To many of the world's peoples, New York City and the United States are one and the same. Its skyscrapers, traffic-filled thoroughfares, and crowded sidewalks are thought of as typically American, a monument to our nation's restless energy, to our passion for things big and great. For New York is both a big city and a great city, the largest city of the Western Hemisphere, second largest in the world. It is home to almost 8 million people, and to millions of Americans it has become the symbol of our country. What is the story behind New York? Why is New York, once a little Dutch settlement, the great city it is today? There are many answers to those questions, and one of the most important lies in the city's location. On that day in the year 1626, when the agents of the Dutch West Indian Company paid the Manhattan Indians $24 for the island now named for them, they did so mainly for commercial reasons. Even then, the advantages of the small trading post's geographical position were apparent. It commanded the outlet of a broad river, the Hudson, navigable for many miles inland. It boasted a superb harbor, sheltered deep water bays, affording safe anchorage for the largest ships. It stood astride an obvious route of trade that would someday connect the New World with the Old, and the most densely populated areas of North America with both Central and South America, and it dominated a backcountry of vast potential wealth. In the short 300 years of its history, New York City has more than fulfilled the wildest expectations of its founders. Today, the city comprises 5 districts or boroughs. The island of Manhattan remains the nucleus and center of interest of Greater New York, heart of the city's commercial and financial business. The Bronx, sometimes called the Borough of Industries, lies on the mainland to the north and east. Across the river from Manhattan lies the borough Brooklyn, which in turn is flanked by the borough of Queens. Both of these boroughs are on the southern end of Long Island and are for the most part residential. In New York Bay, located near the New Jersey shore, is Staten Island, which is known as the borough of Richmond, the least populated of the 5 boroughs. Richmond forms a connecting link in the overland motor routes leading from New York City to the western United States. Between Staten Island and Manhattan, ferry boats ply all day long, carrying passengers, automobiles, trucks, and bulk freight. From the deck of one of these boats, one may catch a glimpse of the great Statue of Liberty, a figure that has stirred the emotions of countless immigrants to our shores. Here in New York's harbor dock the ships of the world. This magnificent water gate, open the year round, deep enough for the largest vessels and spacious enough to hold the entire United States Navy without obstructing normal traffic, has been of great importance to our entire national economy. Without this natural advantage, New York itself would never have advanced to its present position, for waterborne commerce has contributed much to the growth of the city. By every measure, the Port of New York is the biggest and busiest in the world. It is estimated that any 6 of the other leading ports of the globe could be placed within it and yet leave room to spare. Its ocean-going craft touch about 90% of all foreign ports, bringing practically all of the silk goods, furs, cotton, and linen manufactures, jewelry, gems, chemicals, coffee, sugar, and cocoa sent to this country. Over 5,000 foreign ships dock here each year, about 1 every half hour of each day, carrying almost half the entire foreign trade of the United States. The majority of the nation's important railroads, as well as its major truck lines, enter the port in some manner. Here they load and unload every conceivable kind of freight. The freight cars alone, entering and leaving the area each year, could fill 8 tracks across the continent from coast to coast. In keeping with its position as the leading commercial city of the United States, New York is also the financial center of our nation. Wall Street and other streets of the financial district are deep, narrow canyons of tall buildings, the homes of the country's great banking houses, the Continental Bank, the Bankers Trust Company, branches and agencies of foreign banks. On Pine Street is one of the 2 largest banking institutions in the United States, the Chase National Bank. But it is the New York Stock Exchange on Broad Street, America's greatest securities market, that perhaps typifies the business of the Wall Street district. On the floor of the exchange's Great Hall, stocks and bonds are bought and sold. Over 1 million phone calls a day are handled here, and each transaction is carefully recorded to be communicated by telegraph, radio, and cable all over the world. But commerce and finance are not the only occupations of New Yorkers. The city is a busy manufacturing area and the leading wholesale and retail trade and export center in the nation. New York's clothing business, the city's leading industry and fourth largest in the United States, crowds the center of Manhattan. Here are produced 3 out of 4 of the ready-made coats and dresses and 4 out of 5 of the fur garments worn by American women. The streets here are packed with trucks, while through narrow traffic holes, push boys guide hand trucks of metal pipe with clothing swaying from their racks. Clothing that is worn by millions of Americans. With more theaters, schools, libraries, and museums than any other American city, New York must be ranked as our nation's cultural leader. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, perhaps the greatest center of classical art and learning in America, exerts an influence that is worldwide, while the Museum of Modern Art exhibits displays of modern painting, sculpture, and photography, and is the repository of a unique and valuable motion picture collection. Yet, for all its imposing size and activity, New York is a city of people, and it is the city's people that make it great. Here in New York live people of over 60 different national origins. More Germans than there are in Bremen. More Irish than there are in Dublin. More Italians than there are in Genoa. Here they live together, work together, play, and go to school together. In the tall apartment houses that line Manhattan's Park Avenue live many of New York's wealthier residents. One of the broadest of New York's thoroughfares, it is the main artery of its locality. It is constantly filled with non-commercial traffic. Buses, drays, and trucks are limited to traveling but 2 blocks in one direction in order to make delivery of goods possible. The street itself is supported by gigantic steel stilts above a 2-story railroad yard leading to one of New York's major rail terminals, the Grand Central Station. The borough of Queens, occupying part of Long Island, is perhaps typical of New York's residential areas. Across the East River from Manhattan, it is reached by a number of bridges and tunnels, among them the 59th Street or Queensboro Bridge, and the Queens Midtown Vehicular Tunnel. Morning and evening, as the residents of Queens commute to and from their offices, stores, and places of employment in Manhattan, these arteries of travel are crowded with traffic. In addition to private means of transportation, the city of New York has interborough and interurban bus lines plying its streets. While underground, a municipally operated electrical railway system spreads through 4 of the 5 boroughs, with the trains leaving the subways in some areas to travel over the streets on giant steel elevated structures. The people of New York may travel mile after mile on this integrated system on either local or express trains for only 5 cents for each trip. By far, the greatest numbers of New Yorkers travel to and from work by means of the subways, the elevateds, and the bus lines. In the borough of Queens, the homes of the New Yorkers may vary in size, shape, and type of construction. They may be single homes or apartment buildings, but regardless of type, they are much like the homes of people living in the residential suburbs of any other large American city. Here one may see the same familiar supermarkets, and the same familiar neighborhood schools, and the same familiar milk truck, and on certain days of the week, even the same familiar family wash lines that one sees in countless cities across our nation. But New York, again like any modern commercial and industrial city, has its less attractive areas. Manhattan's Lower East Side has been traditionally the district where live the poorer people, as well as the newly arrived immigrants. The human story of the Lower East Side is a familiar chapter in the epic of America. Here have lived the people whose hands built the city's subways, its bridges, and its skyscrapers. Its tenements and crowded streets magnify all the problems of big city life. Yet, not all of the district is blighted, for from its dark tenements have come generations of American workers, men and women of many different national origins, who have given their lives to the building of America. And from it, too, there have emerged an amazing number of national figures, great statesmen like Alfred E. Smith, one-time governor of New York State, Joe Davidson, Jacob Epstein, sculptors of international reputation, George Gershwin and Irving Berlin, composers whose songs all Americans sing. Housed in this historic, imposing building is the executive branch of New York City's government. Like any other city, New York has its elected and appointed officials, charged with protecting the persons and property of the city. Near the City Hall is located one of the most elaborate groups of civic buildings to be seen in any city outside of Washington, D.C. The municipal building, one of the group, is a magnificent structure 40 stories high. In these numerous buildings are located the headquarters of the various branches of city government. The efficient fire department, its men trained to protect life and property in the world's highest buildings. Its world-famed police department, whose members are numbered in the thousands. Its public utilities of gas, water, electricity, and central steam for heating buildings. The largest municipal health and hospital system in the world. And its remarkable Department of Sanitation, which is responsible for the disposal of refuse and waste, the cleaning of streets and the removal of snow, with its tremendous fleet of motorized equipment. But the greatness of New York is perhaps most spectacularly seen in its buildings. For here on the island of Manhattan is the most impressive concentration of stone and steel masonry the world has ever known. The vast number of people who have crowded into this district have made for a scarcity of land and a consequent high value of whatever land has been available. While other cities have spread outward, New York has been forced to build upward. From the bay, the skyline of commercial New York, lower and midtown, is an extraordinary spectacle, and the effects of hundreds of towering buildings crowded together along the narrow island is one never to be forgotten. Tallest of New York structures and the tallest in the world is the amazing Empire State Building. It rears its 103-story head 1,250 feet over the sidewalks below. It has 7 miles of elevator shafts and 73 elevators, which travel so fast that a passenger entering one at the street floor may reach the 80th floor exactly 1 minute later. One of the most famous hotels in the world is the Waldorf Astoria. 80% of the building is over the tracks of the New York Central and the New Haven railroads, and private railroad cars carrying guests of the hotel may be shunted to a special entrance located in the sub-basements. 47 stories high and containing 2,200 rooms, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel has been called New York's unofficial palace. Rockefeller Center, a group of buildings occupying 3 city blocks, is the largest building project ever undertaken at one time by private capital. It is a self-contained city with business offices, centers of international commerce, theaters, and its own post office. The Central RCA building is in area the largest office building in the world, and so large is Rockefeller Center itself that its estimated daily population is over 150,000 people. From the one-room log cabin of a Dutch trader to the multi-storied buildings of Midtown Manhattan, that is the story of New York. A fabulous city, a fascinating city. New York is a great city for many reasons. Its strategic geographic location, its tremendous harbor flanked by marine, highway, air, and railroad tributaries, have made the city one of the world's greatest transportation centers, the commercial capital and the international trading capital of the United States. Here, too, is concentrated much of the banking wealth of our country, for the city is the financial center of the wealthiest of the world's nations. It is supreme among our cities in the volume of its retail trade, which is diverse in interests and in the character of commodities, the raw materials for which are drawn from the far reaches of the world, sometimes only to be fabricated and subsequently redistributed in new form in diverse directions. Likewise, New York's wholesale trade calls upon all parts of America and the world for supplies. Eggs from the Middle West, citrus fruit from Florida and California, vegetables from the South and New England to feed the people of New York and the people of other countries. It is one of the greatest manufacturing and processing areas of the nation. The nation's foremost center of culture, a city of museums. And a city possessing hundreds of acres of public parks for the rest, relaxation, and health of its millions of residents and thousands of annual visitors. Best known is Central Park in the borough of Manhattan, with its zoo, its playgrounds, miles of shaded walks and drives, and its restful lakes. New York with the most complex municipal school system in the world, with churches of every denomination, with homes of variegated pattern ranging block by block along miles of streets, avenues, and boulevards, with multi-storied hotels to welcome business visitors and tourists, its tall buildings housing international and national communication systems, its thousands upon thousands of young people who tomorrow, like their parents before them, will continue to create a great story, the story of a great city, the city of New York.
the whole country is called a metropolis. New York is a metropolis because it serves the needs of the entire United States. One reason New York has become a metropolis is the fact that it has an excellent harbor. This port is the largest in the world. New York is a natural gateway to the United States. From New York, natural lowland routes lead inland, up the Hudson and Mohawk River valleys into the Great Lakes region and the Midwest. Besides being a natural gateway into the interior of the country, New York is also the terminus of many other lines of transportation. As a result, an immense volume of shipping passes in and out of New York. Goods from many parts of the country and from foreign lands are handled at the city's docks. There is room for hundreds of vessels to load or unload their cargoes. More ships come into this harbor than to any other port in America. Railroads connecting New York with other parts of the country carry great quantities of freight and many passengers to and from the city. New York is the eastern terminus of a great railroad network that reaches all over North America. Passengers here arrive and depart for all parts of the United States and for Canada and Mexico as well. Aviation has increased New York's importance as a transportation center. Near the city are 3 huge airports. These are busy day and night, serving passenger and cargo airlines. Much of the air traffic going in and out of these air terminals is international. From here, one may buy a ticket for a flight around the world or fly overnight to London and Paris. By plane, it takes less than a day to South America. Flying over New York, it is easy to understand why there are so many tall buildings on the small island of Manhattan. Here, the only way that enough room can be made for business places and homes is to erect higher and higher buildings. Many of these are called skyscrapers. The metropolis of New York is actually made up of several large cities. The most important of these cities within the city is the crowded island of Manhattan, where 2 million people live. Another 3 million live elsewhere, but have jobs in Manhattan, and every day, hundreds of thousands come to the city as visitors. In a crowded metropolis like New York, people have difficulty in finding places to live. Park Avenue, the city's best-known residential street, is lined with tall apartment houses. Another section of Manhattan has the largest Negro population of any community in the world. This is Harlem. In much of Harlem, as in other parts of New York, families live crowded together in tenement houses. Some sections of New York, such as the one called Little Italy, seem almost like communities in a foreign land. These neighborhoods were settled by immigrants who arrived in New York from countries in the Old World. Others who came later found life in the New World less strange by living with those who could speak their own language. In Chinatown, most of the residents are people whose parents or grandparents came to the United States from the faraway Orient. Many different races and nationalities make up the population of New York. This metropolis has been called a melting pot because sooner or later its people become Americans. In some parts of the city, worn-out tenements are being replaced by groups of modern skyscraper homes. In these buildings, hundreds of families have their own separate sets of rooms. called housekeeping apartments. The crowded island of Manhattan is but one of the 5 divisions of New York City. These divisions are called boroughs. Besides Manhattan, there are the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, and Richmond. And for miles beyond, the activities of the people are so closely linked. During the morning and evening rush hours, all means of transportation are crowded with passengers. Ferry boats run back and forth across the rivers and bays that surround Manhattan Island. Most people who travel by ferry come from communities in New Jersey and in the borough of Richmond. Before bridges were built to link Manhattan with the mainland, ferry boats were the only means of moving passengers and vehicles to the island. Today, New York has the most elaborate rapid transit system of any city in the world. Because there is no longer room for tracks above ground, trains go underground into subways and tunnels as they approach the crowded areas of the city. Tunnels have been bored deep under the rivers, and fast electric trains run on tracks laid beneath streets and buildings. These underground railways make it possible for New Yorkers to get about the city quickly. Moving stairs help passengers from the subway stations far below ground to the level of the streets. Because Manhattan is an island, a great many bridges are needed so that automobiles and trucks can go in and out of the city. The George Washington Bridge spans the Hudson River and connects the highways of New Jersey with express highways that run around the island of Manhattan. New York's express highways also connect with tunnels constructed just for motor traffic. 4 great highways built under the rivers lead from various parts of the island to New Jersey, Brooklyn, and Queens. These tunnels are used by passenger cars, buses, and by the fleets of trucks which haul goods and supplies for the millions who live in the city. Tons and tons of food are needed every day for homes, restaurants, and hotels. Because the land on Manhattan Island is too valuable to be used for raising food, everything in the markets comes from outside the city. Farms as far away as Oregon, California, and Texas help feed the millions who live in the metropolis. Because there is little space for storage in Manhattan, fresh foods must be delivered to big central markets every day. During the early morning hours, produce from all over the country is distributed to thousands of smaller markets, grocery stores, and restaurants. At noontime, streets are filled with lunch hour crowds. Throughout New York's business districts, there are restaurants to suit every taste and every pocketbook. Automats are cafeterias where customers drop coins in a slot and in return obtain food quickly. Grouped around one short and narrow street at the lower end of Manhattan are many big banks and investment firms. The money that comes to Wall Street belongs to millions of people everywhere who have put their savings in bank accounts, insurance policies, stocks, and bonds. These financial companies provide much of the money needed to carry on business and to expand industry in the United States as well as abroad. The money to build skyscrapers comes from Wall Street firms that make a business of investing money for other people. The Empire State Building cost many millions of dollars to build and is the tallest structure in the entire world. This skyscraper is 102 stories from top to bottom. It provides New York's crowded midtown area with space for thousands of additional offices and shops, yet it occupies less than 1 block of the city's valuable land. The Chrysler Building has 77 stories and, like other skyscrapers, provides headquarters for big businesses that have offices all over the country. The group of tall buildings at Rockefeller Center is almost like another city within the metropolis. People like these earn their living by doing things which other people want, instead of making things. But within the metropolis of New York, a great variety of goods is manufactured. The largest industry is the making of all kinds of clothes, from underwear to fur coats. More than a third of all the clothing worn in the United States is made in Manhattan's Midtown Garment Center. This industry, developed in New York, soon became a fashion center. The manufacture of a single garment may be done in several different workshops. In this heavily congested district, it is cheaper and faster to move clothing from one shop to another in hand carts. Today, stores all over the country sell clothing patterned after styles seen in Manhattan's most expensive shops. New York, like every metropolis, is a great trading center. Upper Fifth Avenue's shopping district is the most fashionable in the country. Many new styles are first shown in Fifth Avenue stores. The window displays of shops along Fifth Avenue are one of the principal attractions for most visitors to New York. Many dealers import expensive merchandise from abroad, while others specialize in fine American-made products. Just as the metropolis of New York is a center of transportation, industry, and trade, it is also a great cultural center. Of all its many museums and art galleries, none is more famous than the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Almost every day, classes from some public or private school visit the Metropolitan. Just as the metropolis of New York is a center of transportation, industry, and trade, it is also a great cultural center. Of all its many museums and art galleries, none is more famous than the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Almost every day, classes from some public or private school visit the Metropolitan. Admission to the museum is free of charge. A great many students attend. It is almost a miracle that in the very heart of crowded Manhattan Island, an immense tract of land has been reserved for a public park. The men who planned for New York's growth had great vision. Long ago, they foresaw the need for Central Park, Manhattan's great outdoor playground. But millions of New York families live too far away from the city's parks and playgrounds to visit them every day. The children whose homes are in crowded neighborhoods have no choice but to make playgrounds out of the streets. On hot summer days, an opened fire hydrant is the city child's substitute for wading in a cool, running brook. And for older boys, the swimming hole is at the end of one of the city's hundreds of piers. Coney Island, one of New York's largest beaches, faces the Atlantic Ocean and is easily reached by subway trains. Throughout the summer months, Coney Island is crowded with people seeking relief from the sweltering heat of the city. At night, the brightest reflection in the skies over New York comes from Manhattan. The biggest entertainment center in the world is the area around Times Square and Broadway, the Great White Way. Within walking distance of Times Square, there are hundreds of theaters, stage plays, and motion pictures. Here, too, are the opera, the ballet, and concerts.
Everywhere throughout the civilized world, people know this street. Broadway, USA, the longest street in the world. But Broadway is a street of many moves, and we're going to see most of them. We'll follow Broadway through the heart of New York, from top to bottom. Let's begin where New York ends. Cochrane House has been standing since stagecoach days. Here's Van Cortlandt Park Station, modern stagecoach stop. 218th Street and Columbia University's Baker Field. Moving slowly downtown, Dyckman House at Dyckman Street and Broadway. Now a museum of Dutch colonial culture. A reminder that once the Dutch ruled Manhattan Island. Still Broadway, but a few blocks down, our mood changes. The Cloisters, highest point of Manhattan Island. Here, the culture is Gothic and Romanesque. These are exact replicas of French cloisters, picturesque monastic settings. Art forms older than democracy. Priceless treasures in stained glass tell tales of peasants and of kings. The cloister arcades overlook the serene Hudson River. Then 168th Street and Broadway, Medical Center. A dozen streets downtown, the Hispania Society of America, a museum recalling an era when Spain's explorers led the way to the New World. Spain's heroes, emblazoned in stone, still stand watch on Broadway. We continue downtown past more Broadway scenes and rapid changes of character. Pausing briefly at the Jewish Theological Seminary, housing invaluable documents of ancient Judaism. Off to the right, we can see General Grant's tomb. Columbia University, its famed statue of alma mater, inviting those who seek knowledge. One of the world's great seats of learning. one of the world's great seats of learning. Below Columbia is the most densely populated residential section in the world, from 110th Street to 72nd. Here, Broadway's benches offer rest and rendezvous, like any small town. 59th Street, Columbus Circle. Two, please. One heavy on the mustard. Rising in the middle of Broadway, Christopher Columbus himself. Sharing the circle, a lesser-known monument of the Spanish-American War. Remember the Maine. Here, too, are hansom cabs for trips around Central Park. By day, tourists. By night, lovers. At 59th Street, Broadway touches Central Park. Central Park, with its green grass, lakes, and zoo, extends from 59th to 110th Street. Situated in the heart of Manhattan, it's the most valuable piece of real estate in the world, ever to be set aside as a park. Back at Columbus Circle, other landmarks high over Broadway. The right time, the weather. Immediately below Columbus Circle, New York's automobile district. Just off Broadway, a tall sentinel. Radio City. Back on Broadway, Father Duffy. The theatrical district with its shows. Its eateries. Its nighteries. Times Square, wonderland of lights. The Broadway everybody knows. And the Times building, most famous of landmarks. "42nd Street, crossroads of the world." Just south, the Metropolitan Opera House. And a radio station. Macy's of Herald Square. And considerable competition. The heralds of Herald Square sound the hour. Broadway and 23rd, the eternal light. Union Square. Everything from communism to vegetarianism is discussed. And because this is America, the arguments never stop. One of Broadway's many churches, Grace Church. Another great Broadway merchant, John Wanamaker's at 9th Street. Touching Manhattan's Main Street with its air of bohemian oddity, Greenwich Village. Moving downtown, the Bowery, Street of Misery, is a neighbor. The cross streets have names here, no longer numbers. Broadway cuts through the textile district below Canal Street to City Hall. Here's an interesting fact. The uptown walls are of cheaper construction. The early city fathers felt Manhattan was through growing, and nobody would look at that side of the building. City Hall Park. Just off Broadway, the Brooklyn Bridge, where Steve Brody took a dare and jumped. Behind it, the Manhattan Bridge. His business is picking up. Speaking of business, Wall Street from Broadway, the Exchange. Sub-Treasury Building, scene of Washington's inauguration, and historic Trinity Church. Here, old New York's elite worshipped, and many lie buried. Alexander Hamilton. Robert Fulton. New York's first park, Bowling Green, still enclosed by the original iron fence imported from England in 1771. Abraham de Peyster, mayor of New York in 1691. The Custom House. Seen from it, a labyrinth of brick, granite, and marble. Surrounding Bowling Green is the oldest neighborhood in Manhattan, now a monument to national and international finance. Number 1 Broadway, once General Washington's headquarters, now headquarters for great shipping lines. Looking south from the Battery, the Statue of Liberty, symbol of America, as Broadway is the symbol of Main Street.